Good morning. For those who are able to, please stand for prayer and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem. Almighty God, let us work together to serve all our people. Dieu, tu puissant, aidez-nous à travailler ensemble afin de bien servir nos citoyens. It's my pleasure now to ask Councillor Chernachenko to introduce our special guest who will sing the national anthem for us. Conseiller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. Tenor Michael Carty has worked and lived in Old Ottawa South and Sandy Hill for 20 years. In addition to his work as a solo and choral singer, he is a freelance simultaneous interpreter and radio producer. Michael has just returned from a tour of Scotland and England with the Christchurch Cathedral Choir of Men and Boys, and he has also performed several concerts recently in Germany. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command, car ton bras se porte l'épée, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At this time, I'd like to invite Major William Barry to join me here in the council chamber, along with his city councillor Eli L. Shantiri, Deputy Mayor. Welcome, Major, and nice to have you and your family with us. And Councillor L. Shantiri will join us in just a moment. Since his long and distinguished military career has come to an end, Major Barry has led an active life of community involvement in the city of Ottawa, and particularly in the West End.
Since his long and distinguished military career has come to an end, Major Barry has led an active life in a community involvement.
And about history, Major Barry was a founding member of the March Historical Society, where he served for 5 years as chairman, as well as the Canada Legion, where he had served as chairman, sergeant of arms, and parade commander. He was also a founding member and past chair of the Pinnies Point Foundation, where he helped to restore the property and negotiate the handover of the property to the city as a heritage park. Major Barry is a 22-year member of Unit 7 of the Korean Veteran Association, where he is currently both the sergeant at arms and parade commander. He is also an avid motorcyclist as part of the local chapter of the Army Veterans Motorcycle Unit, where he was named Rider of the Year in 2009. It's fitting that we have Major Barry receiving this award in 2013, which is the Year of the Korean Veteran in Canada. Selon tombe vraiment bien que ce soir en 2013,
it is fitting that we have a Major Barry receiving this award in 2013, which is the Year of Korean Veteran in Canada.
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the armistice, which marked the end of the Korean War. It is important that we pay tribute to our veterans who fought so bravely for all of us those many years ago. That alone would be reason enough to celebrate Major Barry, but he has lived a life of service to his community, which is why we're here today. For all that you have done and continue to do for your fellow residents and fellow veterans in Ottawa, I want to sincerely thank you for your service to our community. And it's my honor, along with our Deputy Mayor and your City Councillor Eli L. Shantiri, to present you with the Mayor City Builder Award for a job well done. Congratulations.
certainly nice to be recognized while you're still alive. In the old days, I served on Canada Council. Along with me was a feisty, opinionated lady, and I said, I've got to get to know this woman. Well, I got to know her, and I married her. So she's put up with me all these years. Stand up, Beverly. So, if anyone deserves an award, it's her. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Major Barry, and thank you, and to Mrs. Barry. Roll call, Madam Deputy Clerk, please.
Conseiller Manette.
Yes, sir.
Councillor Blois. Councillor Harder. Councillor Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor El-Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Caudry.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Here.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseiller Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor Clark.
Here.
Councillor Holmes.
Here.
Councillor Hobbs.
Here.
Councillor McCrae. Councillor Chernyshenko.
Present.
Councillor Hume. Conseiller Blais.
Here.
Councillor Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Conseiller Darache.
Here.
Councillor Hubley. Mayor Watson.
Here.
Le quorum est 10, Monsieur le maire.
Merci.
You have quorum.
De procès verbaux le 17 juillet 2013. Confirmation of the minutes July 17th, 2013. Carried. Declarations of interest, including those originally arising from prior meetings. Received none. Communications as presented. Regrets. Councillor Hubley advised he will be absent from the council meeting of the 28th of August 2013. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Conseil Holmes et Blois. Councillor Holmes to present introduce reports.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Blois, that Ottawa Board of Health Report 9, the report from the City Clerk and Solicitor entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending 23 August 2013, Community and Protective Services Committee Report 25, Environment Committee Report 24, and Planning Committee Report 53A be received and considered. That the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 35 and Planning Committee Report 54 because of the urgency of the items contained in the reports.
Carried. Okay, so first item is the Ontario Lottery and Gaming RFP process, and as you know from the clerk's memo, we'll deal with all three items, which is the FEDCO motion, the health report, and the Transportation Economic Development Studies issue that are all on the agenda today. So we'll come back to those as we go through the rest of the agenda. Next item is motion for funding from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care on a one-time basis as part of the 2013 program-based grant. The board recommendation as presented. Carried. Status report, council inquiries and motions for the period ending 23rd of August 2013. Received. Committee reports, Community and Protective Services Committee Report 25. Commemorative names, Mary Pitt Center and Nepean Heritage Walk. Carried. Commemorative naming proposal, Proposition sur les dénominations commémoratives Parc Royal 22e Régiment, Royal 22nd Regiment. Carried. Congratulations. Environment Committee Report 24, rapport numéro 22-24 du Comité de l'Environnement, Plasco Long-Term Waste Conversion Agreement.
Hold, please, Mr. Mayor.
Hold. Okay, come back to that. FEDCO will come back to the OLG at the beginning of the meeting. Planning Committee Report number 53A, rapport numéro 53A du Comité de l'Urbanisme. Item 8 and 9 should be held together. On 8 and 9, carried and carried. Zoning 17, 19, and 23 Robinson Avenue. Carried. Zoning 460 Saint Laurent Boulevard, zonage 460 Boulevard Saint Laurent. Carried. Adopté. Planning Committee Report number 54, zonage 886 Chemin March, 886 March Road. Carried. Zoning 1194 Carp Road, 94 Chemin Carp. Carried. Zoning 320 McLeod Street, 320 McLeod. Carried. Adopté. Official Plan and Zoning 319 McRae Avenue, Plan officiel et zonage 319 Avenue McRae. Carried. Zoning 335 Michael Copeland Drive, 335 Promenade Michael Copeland. Carried. Bulk consent agenda is presented. Does anyone wish to remove anything? Councillor Blois?
I'd like to hold the Pineview one, please.
Okay, that's item number D. Does anyone else wish to hold anything on the bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda as presented, minus Pineview. Carried. Disposition of items approved by committee under delegated authority. Received? Okay, so we go back to the first item, and I believe everyone did receive a copy of the clerk's memo, which lumps all of the items under the OLG RFP process together. So just to remind people, Deputy Clerk, the motion is moved by Councillor McRae and seconded by Councillor Tierney, I believe. All right, so just to remind everyone before we open up the floor, the first item is the selection of Rito Carlton with the allocation. The second is, I'll call it the Tierney motion, which is the Health Department recommendations. Item 3, in essence, is who did I say? Tierney, sorry, Councillor Eglai. Number 3 is, in essence, what Councillor Deans put forward with respect to transportation studies, and subsection A is transportation master plan. Economic development. On number 4, receive the Board of Health, and item number 6 is moving the request for funding from the city for problem gaming to the budget process. So individual members of council can call for this motion to be divided as we did at FEDCO. And does anyone else have a motion at this point? I believe Councillor Wilkinson does. So, Councillor, would you like to introduce your motion,
yes,
please?
I just asked them to circulate and put it on the board as well, because it is, in fact, a deferral motion. I'll read it out because it's new. Where it's clear that members of council are united in wanting to ensure that the Rito Carlton Raceway is sufficiently funded to continue operation in the City of Ottawa. And whereas a representative from RCR who spoke at the FEDCO meeting of August 26 clearly indicated that they could continue operations through a combination of funding that the province will provide as replacement to the cut-off slots revenue, which was cancelled this spring, and rental income from the lease of the slots facility. And whereas the Ontario Horse Racing Industry Panel has been studying funding for racetracks in Ontario and will be tabling their findings in about a month and providing an indication of funding that RCR would receive once their plan is implemented. And whereas the lease between the RCR and Ontario Lottery and Gaming that sets the rent to be paid by them for the slots facility has, as stated by RC at the FEDCO meeting, been negotiated and is set to be signed within a few days, providing information on the amount to be received in addition to the transitional funding in 2014 and the amount to be set by the province through the report of the Ontario Horse Racing Industry Panel in future years. Whereas having this information will provide council with knowledge about the funding needed to keep RC operating in the future. And whereas concern has been expressed about having any business given preferential treatment as to the location of a casino operation, whereas the council decision on the procurement process and location for a casino operation would benefit from having information about the future funding available to RCR prior to making a decision, and whereas such information is will be available on the total funding within the next month.
Therefore, be it resolved that the recommendation from TEDCO meeting of August 26, referring to a sole location for a casino operation in Ottawa, be deferred until the report of the Ontario Horse Racing Industry Panel is received by the Government of Ontario and its recommended level of funding for the Rideau Carleton Raceway evaluated and provided to City Council, along with information on the annual rental revenue to be received from Ontario Lottery and Gaming starting in 2013. This is a referral motion, Mr. Mayor, so I'll speak to the reason for a referral, if I may. It's just...
it's actually a deferral, not a referral.
Deferral, sorry.
Yeah. So because it's a deferral, we'll deal with this first. So if you'd like to speak to your deferral motion, and anyone else who wishes to speak to it, now's the time, and it would be speaking on deferral. Councillor Wilkinson, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm asking for deferral is I, as a person, like to have all the information available before I start making decisions on an item. And the funding that RCR is going to receive to replace what they've had from the slots, because the province has in fact canceled the slot operation at casinos already. They're just maintaining it by not giving them a percentage of the retake, which they've had up till last March, but only giving them the rental income. And because they have said they think that they can operate on that, I would really like to have that information before we start making a decision, because I think it impacts on how we can do a fair and open process. And by making a decision without all that information, I think we are putting ourselves in a rather precarious position, which we don't need to be in. I think this council has always wanted to have full information before making decisions. So it puzzles me as why we really haven't been given much information on the other sources of revenue for the racetrack, and we've rather hastily, I think, went from a full open competition, which we originally approved, to one which is site-specific without having all of the information on the financing of that site-specific location. And I think at the beginning there was even some less understanding about the fact that the slot operation has already been canceled by the province, that the 10% they were getting from that they do no longer receive as of the end of March. They have received some this year, obviously. Last year they got $13.4 million for that calendar year. Now they get only whatever the rental is, and we don't even know what that is. So this is just a request to make sure we have that information before we make a decision, which is a difficult one, I recognize, and one that there's been a lot of polarization, and I don't think we need that polarization. I think we can have it done much more openly and not create hard feelings with anybody. If we have the information, we deal with it fairly, we allow people to talk to each other. So I would urge Council to say, yes, we do want to know, we do want that information, and we'd like to have it before we make a decision, not after we make a decision, because that's not the way we normally operate, and it's not the way I think it should be. And it's simply because I am very much in favor, as you already know, for a very open process. I don't care who gets a casino, and I'll tell you right now, I don't like casinos. If you had a motion to not have any anywhere, I would vote for it, because I'm not a casino pro person. I'm not pro any particular location, but the deferral will give us the information to know if we should be moving in the direction of one or another location. And that's why after Monday's meeting, and I got that information at that meeting from the questions I asked the RCR delegate, who was very open, and I thank him for that, that we don't have it yet. We're told it's coming soon, and when I met with the actual racetrack, the panel that's doing the study, they told me they're going to meet their deadline, which is in September. And I think that they all, within a week or two, they will do that, because I did speak to somebody at AMO who told me they are on progress to do that. So I'm not looking for a long deferral. I'm not looking for a final provincial decision on that report, because I think the report will be very good and will probably give us a very strong handle on how it's going to be done. So that's why the request is here, Mr. Mayor. It's not to say anything against any member of this council on the position they've taken, including yourself, but just to say I, as a person, feel I cannot make a decision without the information, and I think it's important that we have that before we make that decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on deferral? Okay, I'm going to recommend we not defer this item. I've indicated in the past there are really two separate issues, the horse racing industry and the slots, and we're tasked with dealing with the OLG's responsibility, which is the slots. So, yeas and nays on deferral, please.
Councillor Clark?
No.
Councillor Eglai?
No.
Councillor Caudry?
Yes.
Councillor Blois?
No.
Councillor Shirelli?
No.
Councillor Hubley, Conseiller Manette?
No.
Councillor Hobbs?
No.
Conseiller Fleury?
No.
Councillor McCrae? Councillor Moffat?
No.
Councillor DeRoche?
No.
Councillor Alshantiri?
No.
Councillor Hume? Councillor Chernyshenko?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Councillor Deans?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
No.
Councillor Blais?
No.
Councillor Taylor?
Yes.
Councillor Harder?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
No.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes.
Mayor Watson?
No.
5 yeas, 17 nays.
Just before we get into the debate, it's been brought to my attention that the Mayor of South Dundas, Stephen Byfelds, and the Deputy Mayor, Jim Locke, are with us. We'd like to welcome them. If they could stand and be recognized. Welcome to Ottawa City Council. Okay, so we have before us the McCrae-Tierney motion, and this is now the opportunity for debate. Yeah, if we could have the motion on screen, and I believe it's been circulated in writing as well, Madam Deputy Clerk. Does Councillor Harder not have it? It was sent last night, so if we can get copies, otherwise it is on. It won't fit all on the screen, but Councillor Manette for debate, please. Monsieur le Conseiller.
Just a question before debate, Mr. Mayor. Is this when we ask for motion, parts of the motion to be separate?
No, we'll do that just before the voting.
Okay,
And I understand you wanted it separate. I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any other motions aside from Councillor Wilkinson's? So on debate. Okay. Well, there we go. Councillor Blais.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was going to give other people the opportunity to speak first. You know, I don't think we should go by and not have at least someone speak today about this issue that we've been dealing with for 2 years. There's been a lot of talk in the last little while as to how this situation has come about, and I think it's important for all of us to be very clear that this is not the province's fault or OLG's fault. It's our fault. It's the fault of all of us around this table who have voted for the various incarnations of motions that have come along the last 3 years. And frankly, if we expect the upper levels of government to partner with us on LRT or Ottawa River Action Plan or any number of other big projects we're going to be asking for substantial funds for, I think we need to be doing a better job. So, you know, lessons learned, and I'll be supporting what I supported 2 years ago, which was a relatively minor and small expansion of Rio Carlton Raceway. I think putting the restrictions on it or suggesting the restrictions is, as I've said before, is silly. If we want the raceway to actually compete with Lac Lémy, we need to give them the tools and resources necessary to do that. So I'll support the relatively small expansion, and I won't support the restrictions.
All right, thank you. Councillor Harder, debate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this motion in particular, and there are going to be others, so I'll just speak.
Well, this is the only motion before us, so you're speaking for
exactly.
everything.
But I'm going to just speak to this one, as opposed to others that may come along. Following up on what Councillor Blais was saying, if we were back a year ago when we started the fair and open process, which was to approve consideration of a casino for the City of Ottawa. When we started down that road, our goal was to tell the OLG that we are open to recommendations. You take in the information and let us know what those recommendations would be.
Now before us, we're saying that we are going to accept being a host city, that we are going to, we want that current location to be Rideau Carleton, but we want it to be exactly as it is today. That never was part of what my thought was. I think that this is very limiting. And so I'm not going to be supporting this. I'm not supporting the Rideau Carleton as being the sole choice, but I'm certainly not going to be in a position to limit what is there to what is there currently today. And actually, the 21 gaming tables, which aren't there, but adding that, I see that as being a city that last week was awarded the Economic Development Best City in the World is not something that fits in well with that award that we undertook. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not often that I sort of type up what I want to say prior to a meeting, but this has been a fairly long journey, and I think it's safe to say that this is one of those days that it's simply no fun to be a politician. We have an issue that we didn't ask for in front of us, courtesy of the OLG, and that's not a complaint. It's simply a fact. It was an issue raised at the provincial level. And it's an issue that's not black and white, and it doesn't have a simple answer. There's no single solution that's going to satisfy absolutely everybody. You have those who like casinos and those who don't. You have various businesses and potential investors. You have those that may lose their jobs and income. You have those who can enjoy gambling as a pastime, like going to a movie, and those that are significantly impacted by it and need our help. Those are just some of the issues and players involved. Added to all this is a well-researched and practical report from our health board, saying quite pragmatically that we have a problem currently and it will likely get worse. It recognizes that gambling in one form or another is here to stay, but that it needs to be addressed. In my particular circumstances, added to this mix is my role as a councillor and my role as a health board member. I've reached out to my community in a variety of ways, from email to my newsletter to holding a public drop-in earlier this month on the issue of casinos. My community has provided me with several consistent themes. 1, we don't want a downtown casino. 2, we like Rideau Carleton and its location. 3, we don't want a second gaming facility in Ottawa. And 4, we are concerned about social and health impacts of gambling. Taking all this into account and my own personal views on gaming and casinos, the question becomes, how does one vote and make an honest attempt to respond to all these interests, issues, and constituencies? I tend to be pragmatic in my approach to difficult issues. I know that I'm not going to please everyone, no matter what I do. In some cases, the difficult issues open up the opportunity for compromise so that a number of issues and interests can be addressed. I believe that RCR does this to a certain extent. The issue in front of us today is essentially the reaffirmation of the 21 gaming tables that Council has already approved. I voted against it at the time because of the lack of a report from the Ottawa Public Health Board. We now have that report, and it too is pragmatic and forms the basis of the amendment I moved that was passed at FEDCO. The 10 proposals, or as one of my colleagues referred to it, the 10 commandments, are in my opinion thoughtful and accepting of gambling not going away, but at the same time needing to be addressed. I'm not suggesting we end gambling in Ottawa, but that we deal with it responsibly. For example, we allow alcohol, but we set an age limit. We card people at bars in the LCBO. We have a smart server program and police enforcement campaigns, to name just a few initiatives. This motion is brought in the same spirit. I don't believe for a minute that the OLG will force the implementation of all of them, maybe not even any of them. So why the amendment then, you ask? Because they may implement some of them, or they may come up with some prevention and treatment ideas of their own that are not currently on the table. Because it bolsters the request of the Health Board, which is supported by the Mayor, that we are going to make to the province for additional funds to deal with the impact of gambling. Because it says that this Council recognizes that a positive vote today will have a negative impact on some. Finally, and very pragmatically, because RCR indicated Monday in answers to questions it is prepared to work with the City on these particular issues. And I thank them for that. And Tony Batanti of OLG, as reported in a David Reevely article, I believe, in The Citizen, said the OLG will consider these requests if Council passes the motion. So the door is open for us to put something constructive, proactive on the table, to have that compromise position that responds to people's concerns about RCR, people's concerns about gambling, people's concerns about how many locations we may have. And again, it's not going to satisfy everybody at the end of the day, but I think the motion, along with the amendment that I proposed, is a reasonable way to address this situation and move it along. So I thank everybody for their support at FEDCO. I hope it's still here today, along with some additional councillors, and that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chernyshenko, please.
Thank you. We often put a high value on voting consistently at Council. So I could say the way I'm going to vote today is exactly the way I did back when this first came to us with the proposal for 21 gaming tables to be added to Rideau Carleton, even before it was an issue of the OLG call for proposals and whether we were going to participate. But I think voting consistently, as important as it may be, is also overrated. If the facts before us have changed, if we've learned more, if there's a reason to change a vote, there's often a good reason why a councillor changes their vote. So I don't think any of us should be locked in by the question of, how did I vote in the past, and am I going to stick with it? I think more important is, what do we know now, and is there anything material that would cause us to change our own position? My original vote, original opposition to adding the gaming tables, was quite simply because I knew just enough about the social and health impacts on enough people in this province to be concerned that adding the attraction of more gaming tables was not a good thing, in my view, and I did not want to go down that road. I didn't have a report. I didn't have a thorough study in front of me, but we do have that now. When we took that first vote, I would have liked to have had that, did identify that as something that was lacking. Similarly, when we took our vote on moving forward with OLG. So what do we know now? We have a formal report from our health department which makes it very clear that a significant percentage of people, not everyone by any means, a significant percentage of people suffer from gambling addictions, and that the impacts and the cost to people and ultimately to the city, to the public, of those gambling addictions is quite significant. What we also have is informally a lot of information that's come to us about the economic pros and cons of gambling institutions. We did not call for a formal report. I think we should have. I wish we had. But a lot of information has come to light, whether it's through more journalistic research on this or academic studies, that again show us that the benefits, the economic benefits of gambling institutions are highly overrated. A gambling institution tends to hollow out business around it. Certainly in a downtown community, the impact has frequently been a negative one. So ultimately the choice of whether to use a casino or to promote, expand access to gambling as economic development, the proof seems to me that it doesn't do that. It isn't really a useful avenue for Ottawa to be pursuing economic development. So, back to Councillor Eglai's comments, where does all of this leave us today with the votes available to us? I find myself back where the simplest thing is to not vote. To vote, not even to expand Rideau Carleton Raceway, and that is, in my attempt to parse my way through our various options here, I will be voting again not to expand. I will certainly be voting, if it's still relevant at that point, to depending on the outcome, to support the health recommendations in the form of what was presented by the Board of Health and the motion from Councillor Eglai. Some said that this is tying the hands of business to impose these heavy-handed rules upon them. I don't see it at all that way. When we license an institution to serve alcohol, when we license an institution to serve food, or to be a corner store, or somebody to drive a bus, or on and on that list can go, we recognize that there are risks associated with that, and we provide rules that protect public safety and try to find a balance between protecting public health and safety and allowing business to go ahead. I believe that's what these recommendations do, and so I will be supporting them as a logical, sensible thing to do, even if we continue to have gambling in the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Blois, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Mr. Mayor, what we have before us is the latest step in a bungled process, but I'm not going to rehash how we got here and all the twists and turns that happened. I'm going to focus on the second part of this motion, and I'm not quite sure how this motion actually came about, because the second part looks like a regurgitation of the Eglai motion from committee the other day, and which I was surprised that it didn't get more reaction than it did. But the question really before us, the original question should have been, do we want a casino? And we've never really asked that question. If you don't want a casino, you vote against it and try to kill it off that way. Well, that horse has left the barn. Probably the only time we asked that question was back in my Gloucester days. We actually had that discussion. We actually had that vote, and I'm probably the only one left around here who voted in favor of that. But voted in favor of it with some reluctance, and the reluctance was because we are surrounded by gambling. Whether it's across the river, whether it's horse racing, whether it's bingo, whether it's lottery tickets, whatever, we're surrounded with it. And the problems that exist that are identified in the health report, they exist regardless. They exist whether you put in a downtown casino, whether you expand Rideau Carleton, whatever. So the issue really before us is, do you want to move ahead? And I've consistently voted yes, move ahead. I've held my nose doing that. But the second part of this, to try and sort of twist ourselves in knots to justify why you could have a casino operation or an expanded Rideau Carleton operation and put in all these conditions, you're basically putting the blinders on, trying to ignore the reality out there, and in that case, go back and just vote no. Vote against it completely. Don't twist yourself in knots trying to justify something and tying yourself down so you can't even operate properly. So I'm going to be voting against the second part of this motion. I'll be voting for the rest of it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And this has been a very unclean and sometimes unclear process. And the residents that I've spoken to have said that they wanted to protect Rideau Carleton Raceway, that they're not in favor of expanding gaming in any large way in the city of Ottawa. But they also believe that other proponents, such as Sanzona Eugene Melnick, should be able to compete in some way. So in my mind, the process that or the product that we have arrived at today at least satisfies three of those, at least satisfies some of those goals. So the process has been about trying to satisfy those three goals. There was an additional goal, way back at the beginning about repatriating gaming dollars from Quebec. And thanks to the work of our Board of Health, we understand that there is an additional goal here now, which is to access monies to assist in the mitigation or treatment of gaming addiction. So with a total of 5 goals, this motion addresses 3 of them. It caps gaming at its present level, it protects the Rideau Carleton Raceway, and it endorses the need for addressing the health aspects. The 2 things it doesn't do is it doesn't address the repatriation of gaming dollars from Quebec, which I'm sure if the OLG was following this process along, and I'm sure they were, understanding where they landed in Toronto, there was some hope that Ottawa would wind up with an expansion of gaming. That would be good for the OLG, but that is not what they're going to wind up with. So I can't imagine that the OLG is going to be terribly happy about this outcome. Not that I'm concerned about the OLG's happiness. I've always been very dubious of how they've managed this process along. And then the second piece, of course, which is, what do we say to folks like Mr. Melnick or other businesses out there who may not have come forward, who have said, we want the opportunity to do something in this city? And I think we talk about economic development a lot, and I think there's many good things that we do. But we have a case here where, we have an individual, a businessman who came forward, and I always use Mr. Melnick as a proxy for other business interests that are out there, who are saying, look, we want to be able to do something. We want to contribute some economic development here. We want to build facilities which will employ people, which will increase vibrancy in the city. And we want to use the resources that we have acquired, the lands that we've acquired, for some purpose. So I think, irrespective of the direction of the motion today and how we move forward in terms of gaming, I think we have to be very cautious that we do not, and maybe overt, that we need to send a signal to business interests in this city that we are in fact not closed for business, that a vote on this today does not mean that we're not interested in helping them be economically viable and successful in our community. That's in their interest. They are constituents too, and it is in the best interest of our residents to ensure that it's a vibrant city, that it's growing economically, that there are employment opportunities that are on the increase rather than the decrease. So I think we have to be very mindful that we need to send a message to the business community that just because they may not see the win here today, that it does not mean that we are closed for business. And I would say that we need to welcome them and say, look, we want to ensure that if you discover or uncover opportunities, the municipality will work with you to try and develop those. And I think that's very important, because this has become basically a pro-business, anti-business argument, and I think that's an unfortunate place to land, because that's not where it was intended to land. So I'm going to be voting in favor of the motion here today, and particularly the health pieces which are appended to it. Obviously, as the chair of Community and Protective Services that works with social services, I understand the importance of the health aspect, but at the same time, with another hat on from an economic development perspective, I think we need to send a very clear message and an overture to business that this does not mean that we are closed, and it does not mean that we are not interested in helping you develop for your benefit, for our benefit, for the benefit of our residents, your businesses in the City of Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this council knows that I have spoken on this a number of times, but I'm not speaking in favor of any one business. I never happened all the way through this. I've always spoken only about the open process that we should be doing with any business operation, any business opportunity that we might have in the city. And that's the way we started. The first motion we passed more than a year ago was, in fact, to do an open process. And I've supported that at the time because it was an open process, even though I'm not in favor of casinos generally, and if we didn't have one in a good location, I would definitely vote against it. Somebody put one motion forward to say we shouldn't have any casinos in Ottawa, I would vote for it. But we've had a mixed message here. We've mixed things up because it's mixed up the income for RCR and keeping it viable with the proposal call that should put out the province has asked us to do. And to provide a financial benefit, which we are doing if this motion passes, for any one business over others is illegal under the Municipal Act. And people will say, well, the slots are already there, so we're not doing that. But you have to remember that the slot operation was canceled as of March. It's no longer the same as it was before, and even when we passed our first motion. And the province, by canceling that and putting in a new system, we are operating under that new system. And if we give a financial benefit to a business under the new system, we could face challenges under the provision of the Municipal Act, which does not permit municipalities to benefit individual businesses. And I think that's something that has not been properly thought through in this. I've seen the legal opinion we got, and the legal opinion does indicate that there is a potential problem there. Probably not, but it's potential. And I don't think council members have really thought this one through that way, and I think they should. The business that was just mentioned about whether sending a message to the business community. The message we're sending to the business community, I've heard from many of them, and I've heard from a lot of high-tech businesses, nothing to do with this operation. They are appalled at what's happening. They say, you are saying to business very directly that if we can find a special thing about somebody, we'll benefit them over anybody else. And that's not the way we should be operating as a council. It's not the way that I would like to operate. I think you should remember that we are very dependent on technology industries in this city. Technology industries, by their very nature, can locate anywhere. And I would not like to see that people get upset over the city, and we've had a couple of other incidents in the past, so that some of these businesses say, why should we bother? And I've heard that said, because I deal with the technology industries all the time. I've heard it said that what's happening, why would the only high-tech BIA in this city speak out against the proposal and say it has to be open and fair? Right? Why does the Chamber of Commerce in the West End, where there are a lot of technology industries, say the same thing? They're saying, we want to work with the city. We want it to be fair for the businesses in this city. And when you start making preferential treatment of one over the other, because they say that they're not going to have the money, when we know perfectly well the money is coming in a different format, then they get very nervous about the city. And I'm very quite disappointed that we've taken this approach. I will be supporting the health issues in here if the first one passes, because I think that's important. And if the first motion passes, which is to sole source it, which I will be voting against, then I will support the one about the funding for the roads and things like that, because that's, if it's going to go there, I certainly don't want the city having to foot the tax bill to have the services that they would need there. But I really am disappointed that this took this particular change in direction and then got worse as we went along, and that this council has not been open to really looking at the long-term ramifications. Even the motion that says we should do an economic analysis of the benefit of the racetrack for the, why don't we do it for the benefit of having it at the Ernst & Young Center or the Scotiabank Place or other areas? So we have that knowledge. We're waiting after the fact to get the information instead of dealing with getting information for which we can then deal with a reasonable decision. And that's why I'm very disappointed in what we're doing today. I think it's the wrong way to go. And I know it's nothing against the mayor or the people who take things here. It's the way I feel and think about things. And I have to stand up for my own personal principles.
Right. Thank you, Councillor. Conseiller Fleury, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of colleagues have said very interesting things, especially in terms of public health. At the beginning, we did not have all the information concerning those health outcomes. And what is being said is that the impact of the casino in Gatineau is already felt. And what we recognize is that the portion of the support from the province is not available for people who are impacted, who already are gamblers on the Gatineau side. This is something that is very unfortunate. Also, there's a certain reality as to the investments that were made in the Rideau Carleton racetrack. And it has to be recognized there was investments on a part of the city and the private sector. And whether it's the right location or not, it's still a site that was chosen at one point. And another thing that has to be considered in all of this is access to gambling. I think that Councillor Blois described it adequately. I think if you want to spend money playing, you can go online, you can go to the corner store, you can play slot machines or the bingo. So there's a lot of impact. But we have to realize that gambling is available everywhere, so the impact is already felt. It's still unfortunate, but as a society, we are just reacting.
if you remember, some of the downtown councillors were saying no to a downtown casino. And that was clear because we want to support mom and pop shops, local businesses that are in Byward Market, that are on Rideau Street, and we didn't want to, and other areas, we didn't want to say, hey, tomorrow you're going to have a big casino, they're going to have an entertainment aspect to it, and a restaurant. And they're going to suck all the energy from our traditional Main Street into that facility. That was the start of the debate for the downtown councillors. We said, wait a second, we're putting a lot of energy and investment into our streets, into our local businesses, working through our economic development branch, working through BIAs, and we're seeing successes. People recognize areas of our city for the mom and pop shop, for the diversity of commercial businesses. So today, it's in a weird spot because we've gotten rid of that issue. It's not downtown. So the downtown councillors have gotten our win, right? We've gotten the position where we will not see a downtown casino. That said, you know, where do we land in terms of the public health impacts? We recognize they're existing. Are they going to grow? Well, you know, that's something that's debatable. And on the other hand, we have to be very, very cautious of you know, that investment. There is a current investment on that site where there is gaming, and that needs to be recognized. Merci.
Merci, conseiller. Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have voted in favor of the casino over the last year or so because I had no idea whether we were capable of solving the health problems that come from gambling addictions and people with addiction problems. Now that we have a report before us from the health department, and I want to commend the department, it took them several months and a good deal of work, and people had to be pulled off other work in order to join a team to work on this report. It's clear, having talked to 40 agencies and done the research necessary, it's clear that we are not solving or helping the people with problems. So we don't have the funding from the LIN, which should come from the OLG. It's a very small amount of money. The $741,000 that we have given to us is nowhere near the need. We are seeing just the tip of the iceberg. Rideau Wood, which has the highest number of addicted people in their care, have seen no increase in their funding since 2007. And yet the numbers of people have increased greatly, but it's obvious that we are not providing the care, the prevention that we should be providing. So you see before you there's a request for the $2 million from the province, which we certainly hope that we will find some improvement to the funding coming from the province. There's also a request from the city, for the city. So there are 13,000 people in the area who have problems with gambling, and of that number, 2,000 have severe problems. And there's only 280 people who have self-reported, who have come forward to the organizations like Rideau Wood asking for help. So it's the tip of the iceberg that we see. This is a hidden problem. People are ashamed, but it's a terrible problem. People lose their housing, they lose their families. In the extreme, they're trying to commit suicide. So I think we all have to take that responsibility. If we're going to increase gambling opportunity in this area, we need to ensure that we can deal with the people who are badly affected by that gambling. And it's clear the majority of residents can gamble, treat entertainment like any other piece of entertainment, go to a movie, a similar sort of situation, but there is the vulnerable population, some of those lonely seniors, some of those young men who think that who are smart, think they're smart enough to beat the system. So there are very different categories of people who are badly affected by gambling in our community. So you have before you today a request to the city for a percentage of funding that comes as our commission from the OLG for hosting as a host city. We are getting $1 million more as a result of the increase in gambling here. And we're asking for a small percentage of that, 6.5%, which is $350,000. That is a small piece of the money that comes to the city, and along with the provincial funding, and we certainly hope to greatly increase the provincial funding that will be coming, we need to realize that the city also has a responsibility, that we need to be responsible to be able to work with the agencies that are working in this field that are so badly underfunded. We need to be out doing much more prevention. We need to be out letting people know the signs of addiction, the early signs, so that they can start to look to try to control their own behavior. None of that is happening at the moment. It's just a very small percentage of the people who have been so badly affected that have come forward. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the Health Board is asking that for the 2014 budget, that the $350 be included for debate at budget time, as with any other request that comes forward. That is item number 6 on the Annex A. And so that comes forward from the Health Board to the city, asking for your help to assist us with those people who are badly affected. So I won't be voting for number 1, which is an increase in gambling, because we are not even capable of having the funding and the wherewithal to treat the people who are already in trouble without increasing the capacity for more gambling opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Conseil Monette, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This debate was because OLG had requested that we participate in the process. I don't think it's anything that we brought forward that we wanted to do. Still, I believe that as the process evolved, I believe that we had a clear message that the territory that we had for the City of Ottawa, which encompasses 5 major cities within our boundary, could have accommodated a second casino, especially one in Canada. Our council has and continues to be consistent that we supported Rideau Carleton from the very first discussion that we had. We had asked the province to consider a second zone. Unfortunately, that was not agreed upon. If we failed anywhere, I think we failed at the start of the process. We should have clearly identified to OLG at the very beginning that Rideau Carleton would be a satellite location because it is existent, and we would be willing to have a discussion about a new location for a casino. If you remember the discussions that we had indirectly through this subject, number 1 was to have one in the downtown core. After much discussion and after much studies, it was clearly identified the downtown core was not any suitable site available. Then Mr. Melnick came forward with his proposal, which I thought was a very good proposal, and I hated to see the Ottawa Senators owner be put at odds with the council once again. If you remember, when they came through the Lansdowne discussion, it was Mr. Melnick and OSG that was at the table. As a city council, I think we tried to compete, and we tried to accommodate as much as we could. But with this motion, I think the clear winner will be Gatineau Casino. In fact, if we go with the 10 amendments, it will water down our ways to compete with the Gatineau Casino. OLG has an excellent gambling addiction program, and I urge them to work with the Rideau Carleton to improve the process that currently exists. I do not support, as I had mentioned at FENCO, the Eagle Eye motion, because I feel that many of the things can be resolved through the OLG process. Right now, our motion will not change the demographics of where and when people gamble. The majority will still go to the Quebec, to the Gatineau side, and the remainder will go to Rideau Carleton. The way that I have seen it in the past is the downtown core. To us, it's very easy to head to Gatineau. If you're coming from the west end or out of town from the west, you will probably go to Gatineau. If you're coming from the east or south, you will prefer to use Rideau Carleton as well as a rural area. I personally will ask that items 2 and 6 be separated. I believe that you know my view already on item 2. Item 6, I think the funding, the money that we receive from funding, the city is already putting in money for the health issues. And I would prefer to see item 6, that the revenues not be restricted only to the health issues, but to other issues that are affecting the city of Ottawa, such as infrastructure. At this time, as I said, my regret is that we've divided 2 major groups that support our community, and I hope at the end of the day that OLG makes its decision, takes our recommendation, looks at our recommendation, but at the end of the day, they have the final say. And I would hope at the end of the day that Mr. Melanick would be able to convince OLG that second zone would be appropriate for the city of Ottawa. If that was the case, I am sure that we could work with them to make it a success and to see it work at CTC Centre. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Monette. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, at FEDCO the other day, I asked for the question to be divided because I feel that the second motion, as a motion of council, if we adopt the health report, we've adopted the second motion. I believe that the health report should go to the province and to OLG for guidance. I do not believe we need to get specific in the way that the 10 commandments were distributed that day. On the other hand, we start talking about picking favorites and doing things like that. Well, if in fact the racing report comes out and says that they're going to be supportive of the horse racing industry, then our motivation for supporting RCR disappears. So the realities are that we might be back at this in about 2 months, and that'll be just delightful. I've enjoyed this this debate considerably. Not. I think we have to look at what we're trying to do here. Frankly, as somebody said earlier, this file has been a bit of a mess. In fact, I think it was a big mess, if I'm not mistaken. We have sort of wandered around here with our shoelaces tied together and having trouble figuring out why we're stumbling. And I just think, frankly, that the province has underfunded gambling addiction treatment. Surprised, they underfund hospitals. They underfund all kinds of things. And we can sit here and wail at them, but the reality is that they sit and try to set priorities with what money they have, and they set priorities. And that's what they're going to do in this case in any event. So I think that despite the rhetoric that's going on today, that we can overdo it with this part 2 of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor DeRush, always a tough act to follow.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not believe today is a bad day for business. I think if you take a rather narrow view, that is to say that the senators can only succeed if we support their real estate interests around the Scotiabank or around the Canadian Tire Centre. I believe that there's other opportunities to support the Sens, and I think we've shown a record as a council and as a municipality to support senators We are working with them on a new Sensplex. We have a Sensplex in the West End. We are working with them to attract major events. We have had the Women's World Hockey and the Men's World Hockey, and we're working with them very closely to promote tourism and to make Ottawa the destination for every Canadian and as many international visitors as possible in 2017. So I do not accept that this is not a business-friendly city. I do think there's opportunities for the Sens to diversify their interests here, and we've seen from the awards we've received, and we've also seen the many entrepreneurs who have succeeded in our community, that it is possible to succeed. And we've got, again, a long list of people who have had successful business opportunities, and as this council showed leadership in working with the business community in redeveloping Lansdowne, despite what was a very difficult process. So for me, when I was at committee, Mr. Mayor, it wasn't so much about the business climate. It was more about the sad state of the economics of the NHL. And we live in a community that has a small market franchise that has to compete with some very large teams. And the onus is on the NHL, I think, to make that work. And we'll do what we can with the levers that we have to help the Senators. But I don't think it's to just focus on the real estate interests around the Canadian Tire Centre. I will be supporting the motion today. I think what we saw through the process, Mr. Mayor, is the cracks starting to show on a process that, should we open the door, will be very divisive, very disruptive, and very destructive for the City of Ottawa. And I think we've lived through that with the North-South cancellation. My community was the epicenter in terms of impact of that decision, and I would say it probably took 5 years for the community to start to heal, and for this council to begin the healing process, to get over it and focus on some citywide priorities. So I don't want to go back in time and reopen what will be a very disruptive process that will pit one part of the city against another part of the city. Because what's bad for business, Mr. Mayor, is when we have a council that is not focused, that is divided, and that is not working on the number one priority of the municipality, that is the infrastructure of this city. So I will be supporting the motion today. Again, I want to keep that door closed so that we don't have a divided council, we don't have a divided city. There's too much competition in the world right now. We need a council that is focused on the priorities of the residents, and I want to see this revenue begin to trickle into our city so we can deal with the growth of our schools, the pressures on our hospitals, and the infrastructure that we need to maintain and to invest in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good points. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Condry, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And before I lead into my comments, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you and your office, along with some of my colleagues, in terms of working through a very difficult situation that we find ourselves in today. To me, today is an important day for the City of Ottawa, because today we're not only talking about a casino and its possible location. At this juncture, we're talking, if we were to vote for that motion today, we're talking about dividing a business community in the City of Ottawa. The same businesses that we promote and we progress through our economic development plans, as well as, taking trips around the world in terms of promoting City of Ottawa, which is a good thing, which is a great thing to do. But on the other side of the equation, we're pulling out the rug from our current partners in this community. And, people say, well, you're going to speak that way because you do support Canadian Tire Centre as a possible location. I have to. Not because, it's in my ward, but more so because it makes sense in terms of location, in terms of its exemplary transportation network, as well as who knows entertainment business in the city better than the people that do it week upon week by attracting 18,000 to 20,000 fans to a venue. In announcing today that RCR is a preferred and only choice for a casino without having carried out an economic study, we're playing a game of roulette, in which we're handing the opportunity to Vito Carlton Raceway on a silver platter. We have no recourse if RCR fails, and we have no guarantees that they will or will not. Allowing the addition of 21 gaming tables will not ensure RCR's success on its own, let alone being able to compete against the world-class Lac Leamy Casino, which is one of our goals for adding a casino into the city. If our mandate is to compete with said casino across the river, then we must provide them with the luxury of playing with a full deck of OLG RFP conditions. Anything other than that is a casino in name only, which I believe it was not the intent of OLG. So in reality, Ottawa is not really getting a casino. Instead, we're getting harness racing with slots and a few tables. How is that considered an improvement over what we have today? Having the RCR as the sole benefactor in this process successfully isolates others by going back on the terms that we had agreed to last fall, which stated no limits on location with an open competition. I continue to, as I said earlier, continue to support Canadian Tire Centre as a possible location. Having said that, I also supported in fall about considering RCR as part of the process going forward. As a city, if we are committed to having a world-class entertainment venue, then we must allow the people who know the business to fairly compete for that opportunity. It must be provided without limitations beyond the Ontario Lottery Gaming Corporation's prescribed guidelines. We need to open the City of Ottawa to business. We as a city need to be a magnet for investment in order to continue our successfully compete with other cities as being a superior place to live, work, and play. It is in our mandate to work for the progression of the city as a whole, as a council for this city. There is a saying that has its origin from our logging industry: let the chips fall where they may. In this casino debate, we as councillors have lost our focus for our end goal, and now we're worried about how and where to place those chips. By voting yes to RCR as the preferred location, we're not making a compromise. I think I'm making a mistake. As a council, we have lost focus on the issue of a casino in the City of Ottawa. I think today, if we vote for this motion, we would be failing that mandate going forward, and not to mention the fact that we're not allowing all of the businesses to compete fairly in the process. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Gaudry. Councillor Shirelli, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we are in a position today where we're really forced to choose the least worst option. When this all started, we were looking at the potential of a downtown casino, but for many of us, we saw that there was not sufficient evidence to support one, because placing a casino downtown in areas where we have established businesses might have put those businesses at risk. We know that anecdotally, at least, in a number of instances, when you introduce a full-blown casino to an existing restaurant bar area or anywhere near it, you have sort of a nuclear bomb effect where you pretty much incinerate that entire industry around the new casino. So without any evidence to the contrary, without any evidence or market studies that would show that we wouldn't have that, then as far as I was concerned, the downtown casino became a bad idea until proven otherwise, and it never was. The people of Osgood were fortunate during this whole subject to have Councillor Thompson working for them, because I know he saw this coming. He schooled each one of us in the value of the Rideau Carleton Raceway and slots. He schooled each one of us in the value not only to his ward but across the city. So as the issue evolved, we had the evidence on that part of it. I quickly came to the view that the best solution to this problem that was imposed on us from Queen's Park was to protect Rideau Carleton Raceway and the 1,000 jobs that affect the 1,000 families, and to sort of Pompeify Rideau Carleton, keep it as it is, and then have a competition through the rest of the city for a potential full-blown casino in the rest of the city. As we went through our different approaches to this, we ended up with Mr. Melnick and others coming to us at the beginning of the summer, the end of the spring, saying, hey, why don't you freeze Rideau Carleton? And all we're asking for is that you ask the province for permission to have a second zone where you could have a competition citywide for a second or a real full-blown casino. We were asked to do that. We were told at that time that that was the request, and we did it. Then we discovered that the province simply would not entertain that as an option. So, in my opinion, the best solution was taken off the table, and we were left to make a decision among the rest. And I think the right decision for Ottawa, the right decision for respecting our rural members of the city, and for respecting significant rural institution and economic development engine in the city is to protect Rideau Carleton. So it's not the best decision, but it's the least worst and the best one available to us. So I will urge members of council to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Mr. Mayor, I have sat at this table and I've listened to several of my colleagues talk about the botched process, very, very bad process. It's gone from bad to worse. It's the, what was it, the least worst decision. And I think, you know, if you recognize that you have a botched process, you have a really bad process, then what makes you think you're getting a good solution from a really bad process? And that leads me to remind you that a year ago, in October, when we started this, we were told that OLG had a gun to our head, that we were in a big hurry, that we had 2 weeks, we had to get on with this. There was no deadline. Let me just remind you today, there is no deadline. OLG has not set a deadline for us to move forward. And not one of us around this table has a mandate from our constituents to go down the road of more casinos for the City of Ottawa. None of us campaigned on that. That was not on our radar. So I would just remind you all, there is no rush. We do not have to make this decision today. I thought Councillor Wilkinson made a really good point earlier, where it would be very nice to know what impact on RCR with this report that's coming out in just a couple of weeks before we make this decision. Frankly, I thought as a member of council, it would be very nice to understand the economic impacts of gambling on our community, and if it's actually a net drain, as many suggest it is, before we make a decision, but we still don't have that information. We finally, thankfully, to Dr. Levy and his team, have the health impacts. It's very clear. The more access to this type of facility that you have, the more people end up with addictions. We are preying on our most vulnerable citizens by going down this road. So I ask myself, what's the rush? Why today? Why? You might say it's been a whole year. Well, frankly, the work hasn't been done to take us to a good decision. And we don't have any compelling reason that we have to decide today. So why not? Why not have more of a community conversation, as many other municipalities did, as the City of Toronto did? They went out and they consulted. We have not even clearly articulated what our goal is of going down this road. Originally, it was to repatriate dollars, as I understood it, from across the river. Well, That doesn't seem to be the goal today. Now it's to save the horses from the glue factory or to save Rideau Carleton Raceway. But then again, we heard from Mr. Lorick just 2 days ago that they have transitional funding and they're not in jeopardy now. So I'm just trying to understand what the rush is to make a decision, which I actually think is a bad decision. And I fear, because this council set out a process that said we would have a fair and open and competitive process for a casino, one that I didn't vote for because I didn't agree with, but this council made that decision. Then we do an about-face in the middle of the process, and we may be saving the horses but putting in jeopardy our hockey team. And I think if you ask that question to the residents of this city, which would you rather save, horses or the Ottawa Senators, I think you'd get a different answer. So I think we have to be very cautious about moving forward on this. I know that there's a lot of people around this table that would probably like to just get this over with, get it done, get it off our plate, and make it go away. I don't believe it's going to go away. This is not going to go away. We heard from Mr. Lorick just 2 days ago saying he's going to be back here asking for expanded gaming at Rideau Carleton. And I have to tell you, as the chair of the Transit Commission, to have several million visits to a facility that's in a rural area, not served by public transit at all, it doesn't have the servicing, doesn't have the road access. Do we really want to have that in that area? Is that the proper area to put that type of facility? I mean, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think, at the very beginning we said, this process has gone awry. Well, let's recognize it's gone awry. Let's recognize this is not a good decision. There's more work to be done. We do need more public input into this. And let me just finish by reminding you, everybody that's come here to speak to council that did not have a vested interest said no to more gaming. They all said no. They don't believe that municipalities on their way up should have more gaming. It's municipalities on their way down that expand gaming as sort of a last resort to try and save their municipalities. That's not Ottawa. We're the national capital of a G8 nation, and I think we can do better. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, this has been a long, windy road. We can all agree on that. And I was part of the group of 5, as Diane mentioned, that voted against the OLG process from the outset. I found it very rushed. I always had concerns and felt the OLG was very shifty in many respects. I think we learned a lot over time, and we all had our own individual reasons out of the 5 of us why we voted the way we did back then. Some, it was a health issue. I think Councillor Holmes would be very clear on that. She has a major concern with the health. Some, it was about a downtown casino. Where are you going to stick it between the Mission and the Shepherds? That, we have issues downtown that should be addressed. And a casino is not the magic bullet to any of them. You see in other cities like Toronto, they turn down $50 million hosting fees. Why? Because if you're winning on one side, you're possibly losing on the other. The one thing I've heard time and time again, and why I've supported Rideau Carleton Raceway from the outset, is because even people that are against gambling say leave it where it is. Just leave it where it is. It's planned entertainment. Yes, it's far. It means you have to get in your car and plan to go there. You're not going to sneak off in your lunch hour and spend your hard-earned money at the table. And yes, it will be perceived as a bit of a nanny state situation. We're keeping people from spending their money at casinos downtown. I'm okay with that. And some of the concepts that come up proposed by Councillor Egli, I don't agree with all 10 of them. I think some of them kind of hamper us in some respects. They're just recommendations to the province. But some of them are great. 6-hour shutdown time. Wow, you can't gamble between 3 and 9 a.m. I'm sleeping at those hours. I think that makes a lot of sense. It gives a bit of a break. When you look at you have to leave the gaming table to go to the bank machine. Well, that doesn't mean you're leaving the building and driving back to the city to get your cash to go back to the tables. You're leaving your seat for 20 feet to go to the bank machine downstairs. So a lot of people that are going on about, oh, we're going to lose lots of revenue because of all the health aspects tied into the recommendations that we're submitting to the province. I wouldn't give too much credence to those people that bring those forward. I think we have a good solution here. Leave it where it is. It protects the existing revenue that we currently use in the city for things like plowing snow and our streets. All those things, it protects that aspect of it. What it's also saying is we care about the people that go there as well. So I will be supporting both aspects of this, and I strongly encourage my fellow members to do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Moffat, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, I probably no need to speak to my support for Rideau Carleton Raceway. I think I've done enough of that. Clearly, I'll be supporting the motion here, as it's what I think we should have done in October of 2012, but it took us 11 months to get there. So, some funny comments I keep hearing about open and fair process that we had in October. I really don't remember that open and fairness in October. I don't recall the OLG coming forward and acting as if they were going to be open and fair. I recall the chair of the OLG saying we want a downtown casino. I recall the OLG saying we want to put casinos where people are. I recall a whole host of zones across the province that precluded where gaming facilities would be and where they wouldn't be. I guess that's the definition of open and fair, but I'm confused by that. There is nothing about the OLG and their process that was set out in May of 2012 that is open and fair. If I had it my way, and I've said this probably 100 times, if the OLG can go back to the drawing board, scrap the modernization plan, and start from scratch, that would be open and fair. Until then, hopefully fostering something else that maybe someone could do, if they could come back to the OLG and say, let's go back to the drawing board, let's stop this. I mean, it's hurting municipalities across Ontario, it's not just Ottawa. Then I think we'd all be better off in Ontario, and we could have a proper discussion about the issue of gaming in Ontario. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moffat. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I want to begin by thanking you, Mr. Mayor, and your staff, and Rideau Carleton for their work. As the ward councillor, I certainly have been heavily involved with the mayor and his staff and with Rideau Carleton, and I just want to say publicly and before my colleagues, it's been a pleasure to work. I know we didn't always agree, but we have been able over the past 2 years to come up with compromises and that have brought us to this stage today. I just want to mention something. If 13 years ago the slots had gone to the Palladium or whatever it was called 13 years ago, I wonder if the people who are perhaps a little hard on me for defending Rideau Carleton would feel the same way about not defending the slots if they were out in Canada. So I think Gloucester too. So I think, Mr. Mayor, and one thing I just want to say before I have my closing comments is that I heard some comments from some of my colleagues about no transit to the area. Rideau Carleton, they have a number of buses that go, I think it's 16 different locations in the west and east end of the city. I heard comments about no services there, and there are water and sewer in that location, as we should know. Mr. Mayor, those comments kind of irritate me a little bit, and they might make me inclined to register January the 2nd for another term of council. I want to say quite clearly that Rideau Carleton has stated, and there's been some discussion and concern about the amendments from Councillor Egli, and they're quite willing to work and have in the past, for the last 50 years, worked in a positive way with gambling and those who come to their location, and they're quite committed to continuing to work with the city and with the OLG and with the health board to promote the issues that we feel very strongly about in order to help those who may have concerns about gambling addiction. I want to say, and I have in the past, that we have probably 1,000 people in the south end of the city that work at Rideau Carleton in the slots and at the track, and that pumps about $20 million into the local economy. And the south end of the city is lacking in business and development. We're trying to enhance that, and I know the mayor of South Dundas is here, and a lot of his residents work at Rideau Carleton, North Dundas, Russell, Kemptville, and in the south end of the city. So it's a very important business venture for us. I spoke to the deputy clerk, and I have, as I indicated earlier, over 70,000 petitions that have been delivered. Well, they're here, but I can't deliver them to the deputy clerk personally because they're too heavy for me to carry over to her. But 70,000 people have said, we want Rideau Carleton to stay as it is and be enhanced. And I think that is important, that we follow those wishes. So I would just ask that we support the position of the 1,250 slots, 21 gaming tables. I think we all, with the exception of one or two, supported the zoning for that. Rideau Carleton may come back in the future and ask for an expanded number of tables, and that's well within their right, and they'll have to go through a process, and the City Council and staff will have to work with them to support that if they wish to do that. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I just want again to thank you and your staff and Rideau Carleton for the support that they've given me over the past 2 years. They've been both groups have been very professional in the way that they've worked with myself and our residents, and I look forward to the passage of this and moving forward to support the south end of the city, the Rideau Carleton Raceway, the province, and the city as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are there any other speakers on the item? Just offer a few comments. I want to thank everyone for their respectful comments today. This has obviously been a long and somewhat divisive issue, both around the council table as well as in the community itself. I also want to thank many members of council who took the time to come to the FEDCO committee meeting on Monday. This provided many members of council, myself included, with an opportunity to debate the proposal to revert to the Rideau Carleton Raceway as the city's only location for a gaming facility, and I don't want to repeat everything that was said at that committee. However, I do want to emphasize something which may not have been stated clearly enough in the last few days. This is not a popularity contest between the Rideau Carleton Raceway and the Canadian Tire Centre. But we cannot have this debate while pretending that we don't have an existing facility, an existing gaming facility in our community. Many residents across the city have told me and other members of council that we should simply leave the slots where they currently are. There's no such thing as a consensus view on this issue. We could spend another 1,000 hours debating this issue and we would not have greater agreement. The majority of individuals and councillors who spoke to me on this item, in fact, did not want a casino in their ward. It's very plain and simple. As this item first began to take shape, I had a number of you come and say you just didn't want it in your ward. You supported the principle of having a casino, and I think ultimately what ended up happening was that there was an evolution of the proposal that we see before us that really started with my resolution back in March 2011 to simply add 21 table games to the existing facility. So Council has heard the views from residents who do or do not want a gaming facility in the West End, in the downtown core, anywhere near the parliamentary precinct, near the market, in the East End, and so on. Now, the City of Ottawa inherited the slots operation from the then City of Gloucester, and it's been in operation for the last 13 years or so and has contributed significantly to our economy, particularly the rural economy. And the racetrack just celebrated its 50th anniversary. And today we have an opportunity to turn the page and move forward and start discussing issues which I think are much more relevant and important for our city. We have a busy fall ahead of us. We've got the budget, our final budget as a council, we have the transportation master plan, we have the official plan, we have the cycling plan, an infrastructure plan, we've got a lot on our plate which I believe are of much greater interest to the public than us constantly debating where a gaming facility should be. Now, we've all received hundreds of emails and petitions and have had countless conversations. We've had 3 public meetings on this that were well attended. La vote aujourd'hui est renforcée.
Today's vote is reinforced by the many discussions and exchanges that we've had with our residents over the last 2 years.
How to move forward on this issue, and that's not a bad thing. A diversion of opinion and points of view is healthy. But I'll be voting in a manner consistent with the motion that was unanimously sent to FEDCO on July 17th. And we all recall from that, we asked the province whether we could have 2 zones. We based that on the fairness principle of Toronto having 2 zones, and we are a much larger geographic area. That was relayed to us really at the last minute on Monday, and we were told no. And the backup position, or the fallback position for our council, was to go back to the original Rideau Carleton motion. I'll also be supporting Councillor Eglai's friendly amendment, which he made to Councillor Taylor's motion at FEDCO, which sets out a list of public health recommendations for the industry to consider that are aimed at addressing the serious issue of problem gambling. It's my understanding that Rideau Carleton Raceway has indicated they will receive these recommendations in the constructive manner that they're being made. I'm under no illusions that the OLG is not going to simply accept every single one of those. Some of them perhaps will see the light of day and will make the situation better for those people who have gambling addictions, and others may be discarded. J'appuie la motion